This is a Sitting Ringside with David Penzer. Quick Fix on Radio Influence.
I'm assuming that you watched it, and I'm wondering what you thought, because as somebody who's a longtime fan and a huge Ric Flair fan, I'm wondering what you thought, because I lived it. I mean, there's nothing that was in there that surprised me. It surprised me that certain people said it out loud and that they aired it, but nothing in there that surprised me as far as that goes. So I'm wondering, as a fan, what were your thoughts?
I love the candidness that Rick spoke with. I loved obviously hearing, and I have obviously known his career for a long time as far as, where he had gone, the promotions, the territories. But I think the part that at least hit with me really hard was the personal life. To hear his kids talk on camera, for him to openly admit, he just wasn't home all the time. And that happens with wrestlers a lot. They talk about being on the road 300 days a year, and they're just not around. It's just the nature of the line of work they're in. But to hear his kids speak and to hear about, he was bored being home. He would head over to, another wrestler's house to hang out for a while. But just to hear the family side of it, to hear the humanistic side of it, and to finally hear that the Ric Flair persona, it really became too much for him to walk away from. I mean, the family life in some ways wasn't for him in the early going. So I love the human interest side of it. But Rick's a candid guy. I mean, you know him probably just as well as anybody. But I loved it. I don't know if I could necessarily pick out one aspect that I liked the best about it, but I think overall it was such a well-done piece. And I think it was really neat that they did two-part interview with him, meaning interview him in a one time, and then 16 months later they went ahead and they did a second interview with him. So I loved it. I have nothing to bark about, and all the emotion was in there. Did you feel that as well, that it wasn't just a story, but it was this person's life that they had lived, and all these people around them were there because they had shared moments with him?
Yeah, I mean, Rick's an emotional guy. We all know that. And, Rick is far from perfect, as he said himself. And that's the part that I wonder as a fan. Of course, with social media and the internet, fans know way more now than they did back, in the 80s and 90s. But I'm wondering, as a fan, somebody who walked down the aisle of their wedding wanting to wear a Ric Flair robe with belts, and we're not going to relive that. But I'm just trying to point out that that's how much of a fan you were. I'm wondering if it disappointed you that he's a real person with some real big flaws.
I mean, I think when you look at that side of it, going into it that you're right. No one's perfect. And that he can admit to that as well. Were there some aspects that I kind of was like, I don't know if I necessarily align myself with as far as family values and whatnot? Yeah, of course. Absolutely. When it came to the topic of monogamy, I kind of cringed a little bit, but once again, he lives his life the way he does. I live the life the way I do. Just because you don't see eye to eye on every necessarily moral stance, it doesn't mean that you can't still respect people. As far as I'm concerned, I don't see anybody that Rick has gone out of his way to hurt, if that makes sense. I know things might not have always worked out relationship-wise, but it never feels like people are outwardly angry towards him. Does that make sense? I really feel like everybody kind of, for the most part, is just, that's Rick.
I think that they did for a long time. I think as he got into his 60s and got older, and he still continued with the shenanigans, I think that a lot of people I know that a lot of people started rolling their eyes. There's a time in someone's life where they have to sort of be stop being a character and move to the next phase of your life. And I think until he almost died, quite frankly, I don't think he was able to do that.
Sitting Ringside with David Penzer can be found on Apple Podcast, Stitcher, TuneIn Radio, Google Play, and RadioInfluence.com.